Welcome everybody to the June 3rd Town Council Informational Work Session. We'll begin by a call to order. Let the record read that all 5 members of the Chesapeake Beach Town Council and the mayor are present. Pledge allegiance. Okay, we'll begin with the work session manual. First, just before I give a little intro and give Larry the stage, I really just want to thank Larry for the time that he put into this. It's remarkable, and your perseverance, and why would you want to even do it? but I mean, you just stayed on it like a big dog. And I know you have a background in this, so it does have a little bit of interest, and that's he's the guy to step up. If one of us was going to step up, it was going to be Larry. But the reiterations that went between the professionals that we have in town, and then to include our staff, Holly and Connie and the others, we definitely put a lot of taxpayer dollars into this, but it's something that we haven't done since 1985. So it was something that needed to be done. Larry sent the council, renditions over and over again. I believe all the members of this council that are here now, including me, weighed in. Some a lot, some not, but it looks to me like we have a pretty good product here. And I'll let Larry, take it from here.
Thank you. Again, as I said in the email when I transmitted it to everyone, this is over 2 years worth of effort by a group consisting of Connie, Jay, Holly, Paul, Chris. We actually got John Castro involved towards the end of it. I lost track of how many iterations there were going through this thing.
501.
Okay. Several of you had asked for me to send sort of an itemization of what had changed from the previous manual. When you look at the markup of the manual that we kept as we went through it, you can't hardly read it anymore. There's so many changes, comments, and things that I just decided it'd probably be cleanest to just send you a clean version of it. Treat it as this is the first time you're reading the manual, and we're almost starting from scratch here. It was an incredible effort. I'm glad that it's almost done. I don't know what I was thinking when I took that on, but I'm glad it's almost done. So with that, I'll just open it up to whatever.
Yeah, I'll just to add, to that, and your decision was correct. I mean, it's at most a 25-page document, which I'm sure everybody at this table's had a 25-page document to pick up and review. So you were right that it's just something that we should look at now.
And Alyssa had multiple comments in here too. Sorry.
Right. So it wasn't really a hard document to go through and ask questions from. It just got better and better as the group went on. So I'll just start by taking comments from the council, and I'll start to your right.
And just one last thing, please. I know I have to go back and check the references to appendices. Some of them have changed, and I know there's a couple of incorrect references in there right now to the wrong appendix, so I need to clean that up.
Thank you, and great job. Great job, everyone involved. I basically have 3 primary questions that I'd like to discuss. The first one is on page 14. And it's not so much questions. Some of this might just be a discussion, hopefully, and then maybe we can add something to it. It's page 14, section D, and it's where it says capital contribution charges paid by property owners may not be held indefinitely. And my question or thought is that do we know how many capital connections are held that have been held indefinitely, bought more than 5 years ago, or even 24 months ago? And if we know that number and who those owners are, will this section D apply to those taps? If not, my thought is, can we, once this is passed, can we sort of, and enacted, and the 90 days passes, can we say that all previous taps have 24 months and then send a letter or something to that effect? Because I believe that we do have taps that have been purchased more than a decade ago. And so with the mayor's indulgence, I mean, this is my thought. We have other places in our code where, like during election laws and things like that, where we say this is in effect until this date, even though that date is going to be passed fairly quickly. So I would like to suggest that we consider saying that from the date that this ordinance takes effect, it applies to all capital connection fee holders in the town of Chesapeake Beach.
Well, Larry, without the help of counsel here right now, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. It would be Alyssa's call as whether that can be made retroactive. In terms of your first question as to how many are out there, I don't know. Connie, do you have, Jay?
I don't. If I'd have known the question was coming, Dale and I could have consulted and given an answer, but I can't give you an answer.
But just the background for this is we know there are a number of them, don't know how many. The problem that we have is some of them have been out there, as Dr. Bodine says, for a decade or so. So that person, the holder that paid a capital contribution charge that reflected the costs to the town for wastewater collection and treatment at that time. As you all know, since that time, we've expanded the plant both in terms of level of treatment and capacity. It costs us a lot more today to run that plant than it did when those capital contribution charges were issued. So what we are trying to address here is the fact that we don't want someone sitting on that CCC for a decade and then saying, okay, I'm ready to build, and our costs, the town's costs, have increased dramatically.
So
Right.
yeah, my
Okay, I think we all get.
Yeah.
We all get this. Okay, we all get this. We probably all know who bought a whole bunch a long time ago, and the whole bit. And yeah, I mean, moving forward, I don't believe we want a repeat of that in the future. But the question I think that will have to come to our attorney is the issue of going back.
right, and I thought with like 24 months of notice,
Well,
either build or don't.
I
or
think we
pay.
would want to run that by the town attorney, then get a feel for her.
Larry, is
great
that your
question.
action or?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's
Also, just remember the wording that's in there is if that happened and your capital contribution charge period expired, the town would refund the capital contribution charge to you. We thought that was the only fair way to do it is.
Right.
I mean, if I was thinking of amendment to this ordinance, which I am, or this document, which would be to make it applicable to all capital connection users in the town of Chesapeake Beach, then I would be totally supportive of refunding the $3,000 per tap that was charged at the time, or whatever that charge might be, and then recharging the current rate, whatever that might be at the time. Now it's $20,000, but it could change. I'd have no problem refunding that money, and when the time comes, redoing it. So that's my first major
check it.
issue. Thank you very.
Colleague questions? I have some
I would love it.
And-
similar
hold-
comments, or you just want to do one at a time?
Please, okay, you're asking me the question, thank you.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I didn't hear the one word you say.
Well,
You said
a colleague,
colleague.
which
Oh,
is-
colleague,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, okay.
She-
Yeah, have at it when it's your,
Okay.
yeah, just have at it, yeah. We'll let Valerie.
Did you have a comment on that?
No,
Follow up
he'll,
on,
what I was going to say was, why don't
Absolutely.
we just, move along, let her make her points. I mean, it's not going to be just one go around.
okay.
So we're going to have, plenty of time, but I want everybody to get their initial say.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have three main issues. That was, or the first, and that wasn't really an issue. It's just kind of like a point or a question. You know, it's not a problem with the document. My next one is actually on the previous page. And it's C. So let me, page 13, section 1.10, sewer and water connection fees, part C.
Page 13, Valerie?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it's this, if you read part C, the way I read it, it says that when a commercial property is occupied or if the town determines that a change of use has occurred, the town shall, based upon water readings, review the number of connection units assessed upon the initial connection. I think this is a great idea. However, what I was thinking, again, for discussion, is I would want to request that if this manual passes, that this analysis that is suggested in section C, which I think is awesome, occurs every 3 or 5 years. So we could do this analysis now to determine if the amount of connections and usage is what has been approved previously years ago or even recently, create that baseline, and then every 3 years or 5 years, do what is suggested here, which is to, based upon water meter readings, review the number of connection units assessed upon initial connection. So basically what I'm getting at is that if usage is changed, in fact, either up or down, that we allow this analysis.
Could you tell me what section where you're exactly at?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's what I didn't hear, 110C.
110C.
Thank you.
That we could, I lost my train of thought a little bit, that we could do that analysis now as a baseline. Once this passes, we could determine whether or not the number of meters, the number of EDUs, and the charges associated, the connections, are appropriate to what the usage is now. So that's that suggestion. So it's basically that I think what is in C is awesome. I think we should make a date certain with it, if at all possible. Say every 5 years, this, just what it says here, the town determines that a change of use has occurred. The town shall, based upon water meter readings, review the number of connections. I think that review the number of connection units assessed based on usage is something that we ought to consider as an amendment to this.
I guess I don't understand the purpose of that, because the way it's worded right now is the town can do that whenever they determine there's a change in use.
Right, but that's suggesting that there is a change in use. What I'm trying to do is make it fair and equitable across the town. I'm not saying for all users. Obviously, we wouldn't need to do this for single-family units, and possibly other units. But I think if we make it on a time certain, it is more likely to occur that we can compare the system usage to the associated charges and ensure that everything, either up or down, is cool. That's what I mean. Does that make sense? Or I mean, I can try to explain it again.
I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish. I really
What I'm
don't.
trying to accomplish, what I'm trying to accomplish is that C identifies a system for assessment of usage. And rather than just having it at town discretion, I want to make it a baseline that we do it every 3 to 5 years. That we make a point of looking at the usage to determine that under or over usage is not occurring. So that, let's say that, let's say that a restaurant built a tiki bar somewhere, and that tiki bar sits 40 people, and the EDUs are one EDU to 20 people, and so that would be 2 EDUs. However, when they built that tiki bar, they were not charged any more connection fees for that increased usage. That's what I want to get at, is I just want to check usage.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And I think we ought to do it on a time certain, as opposed to just that sort. Do you know what I'm getting at? I'm trying really hard.
I know you are, and I do know what you're getting at, but there may be a scenario that would work under what you're trying to say, but what you just proposed as a scenario wouldn't be incorrect, because if somebody built a tiki bar, they would come to us with a zoning building permit, and Chris and Paul, the engineer, would decide how many ADUs they needed to pay for.
Okay, forget my scenario. Go back to before I did a scenario. I was trying to come up with, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get a systematic data point
Mhm.
for usage to ensure that we are accounting for the capital connections the way we think we are, so that a client is not getting overcharged or undercharged.
So are you suggesting that if someone has at the beginning paid for more EDUs than they ever used, that we're going to give them their money back?
Well, maybe what that's what this suggests, doesn't it?
No.
Wait,
It doesn't suggest
When-
that.
wait. If the number of connection units exceeds those originally charged at the time of initial connection of the commercial use, the town shall assess the appropriate additional connection fee. But that would be less, wouldn't it? I mean, that reads opposite. If the number of
I don't know.
connection units.
We did, I don't know if you were involved. I thought I sent it to all the council, but possibly I didn't. Do you remember, Larry? We did an analysis while we were working on this. And we just randomly picked several businesses. Did you get that?
Mhm.
Because they pretty much came out exactly today where they were when they came online. And some of them were less, and some of them were a little bit more. But, that could fluctuate
But
too,
see, that's
depending
the
on the
analysis that I
business.
want done on a,
And I think to answer your question as well, we're working on a new software upgrade that the town has the ability to monitor flow
Yes.
on a consistent basis without
Yes.
going out and doing a reading.
Mhm.
So Connie actually will have that information at her fingertips every day. So it's not something that would need to be a set every 3 or 5 years analysis. It's going to be happening all the time.
yeah,
We're always going to be aware of the flow based on what that account has assigned to it.
and so we're confident that the usage
Yes.
matches the EDUs that places rightfully have. We're confident in that.
The only place we're not confident in that is with our partners at the treatment plant. But in terms of our residential units here in town,
And
yes.
commercial,
Yes.
and
commercial,
governmental.
Yes. And we're even improving our measures of being able to track that here in town hall without additional on-site screenings.
Okay, I just thought that was really cool to be able to measure the usage versus what, the amount that they were allocated. All right. I guess I'll let that one go, but. And then finally, and I'll have some more minor things, but those were my two big thoughts. And then my third big thought, or whatever you want to call it, was on EDUs.
Page and section number, please.
It doesn't have a number, so it's in the fee section.
The appendix.
It's
Okay.
Appendix A, third page of the fees. So from the definitions, it says that,
The old appendix A, that's going to be subbed out.
Right.
This is not a correct appendix A, right?
sorry, I
Oh, I'm
just
sure
don't,
you know it if you look at it.
by what was on it.
We've got,
And that's not being, that was adopted with our budget, our general fund, or I'm sorry, utility fund budget. So this would not change. So this is just in here for example purposes, that it refers to the current Appendix A. So
Okay.
this is just an example.
So I'll go
It's
to a
not
different one.
accurate.
I'll go to page, I had two references to this, so I'll go to page 34. Appendix E. In the package that I was given. Okay, my question is this, these EDUs, the way I read it, is 190 gallons per day. And that comes from the state. So that's a standard, right? The 190 gallons per day equals one EDU. That's a standard. Is that,
It ranges between 190 and 200.
Okay.
The state sometimes uses 200 gallons a day.
yeah, so
But it's
that's a
standard.
so my question associated with that, since that's an EDU standard, are the table of equivalent dwelling units, is this the same sort of state standard For example, like elementary school, 40 pupils, and that, so that's a state standard.
This table actually came from the state standard.
Awesome. And those are my three primary big questions, and then I have minor stuff on the next round.
And
Gonna go around again.
and probably an email to Larry would help. Would have helped in advance. Okay, Greg, you got some.
I've got 3 or 4 main issues. Pretty straightforward. FYI for myself to understand this better. On page 2, and I know that we're under definitions, but under supply of water, I just had a question regarding, I presume,
Where you are, Greg?
page 2, on the bottom page, a B.
Oh, B, okay,
Under
thanks.
definitions,
Right.
supply of water.
Okay.
I presume that this is estimated. We do have an estimated capacity that is known, that includes known future demand.
It's kind of the same thing John Castro was. So the state looks at what you're doing now. They want to look ahead. If you ever exceed 80% for any one given year out of 3 years for your appropriation, they make you do a study, and we haven't reached that yet for what we're appropriated to. Does that make sense?
Okay, I don't know if that answers the question, though. We know what our future demand is, and we know we've got projects on the books that could come to, they may not. But it seems important that the demand of those properties needs to be factored in. Have they been factored into that future demand?
They've been factored in and then some by design. As far as capacity, 3 water towers in the field, and even with what we have on the books today, we're not going to approach 80% of our appropriation, if that makes sense.
That's cool. I'd just like a little information on that. It's just for my knowledge base for myself. I'm not hung up on that. It's just a terminology.
And I can get you how that process works. And
Want to understand,
Sure.
that overall aspect of the water supply governance. See here. Had a general question on page 7 under rated capacity, item B. It states period or the state groundwater appropriation permit. Is that what you're talking about? That's related to that information. Okay. All right. To follow up with Valerie's comments regarding sewer and water connection fees. Page 13, I guess that's at the bottom of the page, item C. That's not an exact science. And basing it on water flow is not, I know that WSSC, when they do that, they base it strictly on fixtures, how many you have. If you take fixtures out, that's part of that whole puzzle there. If you reduce fixtures, there should be some kind of, I think the overview on that is the town, it's important for the town to have the ability to increase if the use has changed, but I think it's important for the owner of the property to have recourse too if the inverse has happened. I mean, I don't have a private. If Larry's comfortable with and all our professionals are comfortable with the language, I'm good. This is my suggestion that I see heads nodding. Fixture is a part of that puzzle there. It's not an exact science. Let's see. Okay. Follow on behind Valerie's initial comment regarding regarding water taps that are being held for a long time. Am I incorrect? Is it my understanding that the town attorney actually said we could retroactive that, but we've elected to not put that in here?
That's correct. That's my understanding as well. I will go back and confirm that.
Of
And
course.
when I do,
Because I strongly support Valerie's position there. And I like the idea of, I think it's fair to say, if we enact this and are able to apply it to everybody, if we've got active stuff or future, that 2 months notice is ample notice. everybody's on the same playing field. If you don't build it in 2 months, we'll return the fees, the value that you did it.
24 months.
24 months, I meant, yeah, with the way you have in here. I'm comfortable with that, and I strongly support that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I think, part of our job is to make sure that something like that doesn't happen again moving forward.
Of course, it does, but we've got this other problem, and it's just unequitable for the town completely. And I don't think there's anybody, even the tap holder, that would argue that it's not. So that's all I was going to say about
Okay.
that. Let's see what happens.
You
here.
did good.
But, yeah. All right. One of my own main concerns, I only had two, I think. Valley brought a couple things up, but this requiring to connect to a new water sewer infrastructure for within 200 feet.
Could you give me the page?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's page 15, the top of the page. And there's some other references to this throughout the document. I understand that if there are failing septic systems and they're on property and they don't have any reserves and there's things like that, if we have a sewer line that's coming up through there, I have no issues with, they could be 500 feet away as far as I'm concerned. If they don't have a legitimate septic system, we've got to do something about it if it's within town limits. However, I think that it's important to allow those folks that are going to be affected by a new water sewer line in particular to transition somehow. I don't think it's fair. There's other words fine for that, but to force somebody, to switch over when they have certified, perfectly, and some people have spent lots of money to have state-of-the-art systems too. Some of them have reserve capability on their properties. And I would like to see some language in there allowing people that have a certified septic system, certified, perfectly operating. And I don't know if you can look in the future, like, can you say you got 5 years left on it? I'm not sure how any of that works.
Actually, just not interrupt you. So that's private, and all that is inspected and regulated by the county. They pull
Now-
the permit, they inspect it. The town does not
Right.
proactively check any septic. It's
Now,
not our.
the town, and I brought this up before though, but in order to go down this road and do this, it's really, I think it's going to be incumbent on the town to make sure that they've got records here and they're diligently checking the properties within town limits, and not counting on the county to do that for sure. The county's not going to, I don't know what kind of records they have, how often they require them to be inspected. I don't know if the inspections that they require are of the.
I do, and it's probably none of all of what you just said. And that's just being fair.
Say that again.
I said, I know what the county does and what they inspect and how often they do it. And pretty much it's none.
Okay, so that's right to my point then. And so there's some stuff to work through there. There's additional work required, I think, to maybe not of this manual, but in order to start to govern that and track people properly and fairly, we've got to have records there. And I guess one first step I would suggest, well, maybe Jay answered the question already. Maybe we require everybody that's going to be within, maybe even anybody now maybe there isn't even a sewer line, but require everybody within town limits to get independent third-party certifications, certifying their system.
We've started conversations with the county health department, and we have started building a list of those that are on private systems. And they are, we did a public information request of the county to provide us the inspection reports and those that are failing. So we are in the process of doing exactly what you're saying. And we do agree that some of the inspections have been lacking. So we'll have to figure that out once we get all the information back.
Well, particularly when you've got a line that's in there, they fall within the zone of this language here. It's incumbent on the property owner to pay the cost, to have the independent inspections, the certification, whatever the town or Paul J felt was important. Otherwise, I'm fine with them being, if they've got failing systems and we've got a line there, they need to connect.
Can I offer?
You can. I was going to give him a background on, us going back on this.
Well, that's what I was,
Okay.
yeah. So this requirement is probably the single thing that generated the most discussion within the work group. And we finally settled at the mayor's request on the 200 feet. My thoughts on this is that I just don't understand why the town would be extending public water and sewer into an area unless there is a compelling public health or environmental reason to do so. Meaning the on-site wells are failing, they've got, bad water in them, or the on-site septic systems are failing and they're polluting. If there isn't that compelling environmental reason to extend public water and sewer, why the heck should we be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do that? And second, when you do design to extend these things, the engineers are assuming what the population's going to be that uses that public water or sewer. If you don't have that use on the water supply side, the water in the pipe starts to get stagnant and it's not going to taste very good. And on the sewer side, if you don't have the flows that were expected in the design, you're going to get stuff settling out in the pipes and causing other problems. So again, it's one of those, there's got to be the compelling reason to do it. And if there is that compelling reason, then we need to make sure that the design reflects who's using it and how much usage there's going to be. Is that?
And yes, and to add on to that, okay, as the I want to give a little bit of history, to there. Well, for one, the existing manual is 200 feet. My heartburn on this issue, it really goes back to before this group sat here. Okay, when Mayor Wall was here, okay, one of his final things he decided to do was to bring up, forcing people in the southwest end of town on to water and sewer. He had this big meeting about EPA and running up a line and the whole bit. It was the October before this group got elected. It was a big issue. I mean, these people were outraged that they were going to be that mayor was going to force them to go on, on the system that they didn't want. And I can tell you, 3 years later, 2.5 years later, whatever you want to call it, I still hear from people back there saying, I paid for my septic. If it's fine. If I need a new one, I'll get a new one. I don't want to be forced onto the town system, and I try to be very, honest about it in my responses, which is pretty much what I just shared with the council, and B, quite frankly, now that I'm mayor, I spent a little more time up in Annapolis talking to people that make these things happen. And my guess would be, I have no intention to pursue, running a line up there and forcing those people onto our system, any system. As mayor, I have no intention to do that. I told them that when I was on council. I told them that when I'm mayor, and I'm saying it now as mayor for the record. But I really don't think that it's going to happen any decade soon, given the money that it would take, the partners that the prior mayor had mentioned to get involved, like EPA and the state and this and there. The federal government isn't coming down here with any money for that. I guarantee you that. And the current governor is unlike. Governor O'Malley has a different theory on this. Governor O'Malley was more of a, bring as many people, build as much housing that you can on public water and sewer, blah, 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 and the, current governor is just the opposite. And he just got elected. So while it ain't going to happen, anytime soon, the issue of do you remain at 200 feet or do you increase it to 500 feet, which would be forcing more people onto it. Okay, the reason I wanted to stay at 200 is all the reasons that I just gave you. Now, having said that, when we reached out to staff, I think, Jay probably brought up the best point to, reinforce my thinking, which is basically it'd be more costly to the town if you were to go from 200 to 500, because that means that because we're responsible for the system to the house. So now instead of it just being a 200 feet connection, you'd be 500 feet. And I can tell you, if you ever go back up to some places in the southwest end of town that terrain up there is awful tough too to get down. They have a lot of woods up there, and it's very tough. It would be costly, and and it's also, and I've told Larry this. I said, to be honest with you, since this possibility is decades away, and there'll be new bunch of people sitting here when it happens, they can do what they want to do. They can go in and just have an ordinance to amend the water and sewer manual to maybe reflect what current thought is at that time. We're decades away. So, my thought, is to serve the public that is here now. And I think everybody knows where I'm coming from on this. I know, obviously, Larry, we talked a lot about it, but I think, you guys understand what and that is why I, wanted to keep it at 200 feet, and Larry gave all the right answers as to, why to go the other way, the why nots. I just had a little bit more history and experience sitting on either a council seat or mayor seat on this particular issue. So I just wanted to share that with you because I was going to say at some point in the night anyhow. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Understood. I agree with both of you. I don't have a problem with the 200-foot.
And Mayor, before that's over,
Mhm.
I want to speak to that when you're done, Councilman Morris, just for a moment.
I'm sure he'd be glad to hear what you have
Okay.
to say.
Well, just to sum up my thoughts again on this, looks like, through this discussion, I don't have a problem with that language being in the manual. It's there if the town needs it. What you may consider is maybe explaining a little bit for people that may be affected that the town does reserve the right to bring in sewer water lines if it's deemed that area has an inordinate number of failing systems. Because that's really, I think, where that's coming from is failing systems, get them off and get it into the town loop. And I'd like to see, I don't think I would vote for the manual if there wasn't some sort of transition language in there too, just for people that have, systems. To Larry's point about having enough people on the system to make it work right, you're not going to bring a line in there unless you got compelling reason. And there's a lot of people that need to get on it. So if you've got a few that are still, don't have any issues with their septic, I think it's unfair to make them IN.
Okay, you want to say something to add
Sure.
to the 200 feet?
100%. And I agree with all the thoughts that we're going back and forth. So the one thing about the 200 feet, just so everyone's aware on the council, there's only a handful of houses that are within that now. And one of them happened to be called Town Hall. It was going to be transferred hands, failing septic. So we went out and did the current manual. They're within 200 feet of been built sewer that has been there. So we're enforcing, hey, now that we know you have a failed septic, you are within 200 feet, you have to bring your sewage to this. So it was a can of worms, I'm sure, for Connie. So you have to have
Every situation, every individual case is going to be a can of worms.
right. So there's very, very few, that are like that. So when the town brought in water and sewer, some places were pretty simple. Everyone's septic was out back. They piped it to the existing. They brought it out front. That's where your sewer's out now, right? Alleys are a little different. There were a few houses due to the geography in town where when they came through, they said, you know what, that house way down there on the left down in the sewer, we're just going to give that one water. We can't get the sewer up here. Very few. I'm talking, you count them on one hand. They've kind of been out there. We're not proactively knocking on their door. Hey, you've got to do this tomorrow. But when it's brought to our attention, you've got a failed septic. We're referring to the manual. This is the time. This is why it's in place. So that covers us on a document, no gray area, black and white. We can take a measurement. You've meet the requirement, gives us some teeth, and we enforce it. We might not do another one for 10 years. On the other scale, when you go down south of town, they're a mile from any sewer. They're 200 foot. You could have it 1,000 foot. When we go down there, we're going to bring sewer in, and we're going to be within their front footage. So I'm just saying it's kind of apples and oranges. If we ever decide to go south and provide everyone sewer, it's going to be on a global scale. And the footage is going to be irrelevant because you're going to bring it down their street and back out like it is anywhere else in town. Just it's a little bit apples and oranges on that, if that made any sense.
Yes. So 200 feet is very friendly.
Yeah.
And the last thing I would just want to add, as we all realize too, if water and sewer goes up a certain street, properties become eligible to be subdivided, more houses built, that's
Correct.
something,
And one last thing, because there are two in town. So there is the opportunity for any resident in town that's beyond 200 feet. There's a resident, I want to get into names and numbers, but they were 800 foot from our sewer. They paid at their own cost to get an injector pit. They worked with the state. They went across 260 over into our gravity line. They worked with the town. They found it more liable. They were tired of septic. They said, I'll pay the upfront cost, and they're on the town sewer system at their cost to bring it to our line. So there's always that option. If someone wants to, on their own means, work with us and get to our sewer, we'll work with them. But it's not fair to every other taxpayer to benefit them beyond that 200 foot. Does that make sense?
yes,
All right, okay.
have to work through that stuff.
Okay, very good.
The next page 16 comes to really my other main concern with the manual, and that's regarding responsibilities. I know that there's several people in here, and I know that I've been very concerned for quite a long time regarding the lack of definition governing town responsibilities under private paving, namely HOA areas. Now, it says, see, it reads.
What section are you at?
I'm
Or-
sorry,
and-
2.4, page 16.
A letter?
Under responsibilities.
Okay.
And
Right.
I basically, I want to make sure that all of these private areas where the town is responsible, has been fixing infrastructure, is captured with this, is very clear. And I say that one day if none of us are here, and then there's a guide, we don't have to go through some of the bullshit that we had to go through. I know for a fact, I think it's for a fact that if we're going to pin everything on easements, so then we've got these private areas should all have easements built into the plats that allow the town to come in and fix this stuff. I'm fairly certain that there are a lot of areas in Richfield Station that never happened. They're probably mistakes, just sloppy 20 years ago stuff that just didn't make it onto these plats, and these easements aren't on there. So if the easements aren't on them, then legally I would say that an attorney could easily say that's not the town's responsibility based on what the way the manual reads. So if I were to vote for that, I don't know how. Well, number one, I think it's important for the town to clear up all these little plats, and I don't know how you do it, but make sure you have the easements where you need them. We had the stormwater issue. It wasn't an easement. Those are just kind of like the easements are guidelines for the municipality, and it's pretty clear then where the responsibilities start and end. I don't know how in time to vote for this, how I can feel confident that all of the HOA areas are covered, knowing that there's a lot of flaws in the way the town is set up in individual communities.
Hey, you typically use property line, correct? Because it's property line or easement.
Correct. And I'm very familiar with Council Morris. So there's physical attributes in the field: curb stop, water meter, clean outs, and a typical place in our later developments, Chesapeake Village, they're all in that easement. They're all where I'm going to say they should be. Richfield Station, they're all over the place. So that's where you go from a property line to a physical attribute that's, line in the sand. So I'm familiar with what you're saying. We went back and forth with this because that's my world day to day. And most areas are correct, but you're familiar with, on some of the townhouses, the curb stops are at their front door. So if
And you don't have easements to even go on the property.
correct. So, and you are correct in my interpretation where I sit today. I kind of know what's fair, and the town built it. This was a point. We own it to the curb stop. And I'm going to say, I'm going to be fair to every citizen because I'm a citizen in town too. But you are correct. Down the road, if someone else is sitting here, and you go by a document, you say to the property line, well, it could be looked at differently. And so the answer, and I've gone back and forth on this, is the town proactively go in and move all these things right to the property line? Does the homeowner pay for that? Do we leave it how it is and take it case by case? I mean, there is no easy answer in Richfield Station in particular. Now, looking forward, everything that's been approved that's come across my desk and the latest development, Chesapeake Village, those were all built per plan. So moving forward, we've got that covered. Looking back, it's interpretive. And no matter how detailed you make it, you're going to find a situation where you have to use common sense. But it's nice to have a document that defers, for me, when I'm meeting with a citizen that says, hey, definitively, this is where the town's liability ends. And I'm going to use discretion. If the curb stops 2 foot on their sidewalk, we're going to use common sense and fix it to there. But you have a valid point that it's a gray area in those areas. How you clean that up, unless you went property by property and wrote a specific document, I couldn't tell you how to do it generally.
I don't know, when you say property by property, I'm thinking like the cluster of townhomes in the front. And I'm just thinking Richfield Station specifically, the cluster of townhomes halfway through. We don't have easements for that stuff.
Correct.
And you can't, somebody might just say property line and down the road say HOA, now this is all yours, and that would not be fair.
Correct.
So I don't know how, I would really like to see something ironclad in there to make sure that we are covered. Because if I knew that if all the easements were in place for these areas, I'd be okay with that. But because they're not, it's just, there's some holes in it. And
You have some suggested verbiage that we can work with? Or would you like to, I mean, obviously submit it after the meeting or, whatever.
suggested verbiage, I don't know if they're, let me think about that. Because that we may be able to do that, but short of combing through and cleaning up the easements, which that's not happening anytime soon. Right.
So one thing I want you to know for certain is that Paul, myself, Larry, Holly, we sat in these meetings that I brought this up. Hey, in these areas, so we kind of went back and forth. Can we defer here if it's within the easement? And it's a common knowledge. We're going to use common sense. So we did address it. It came on the table. We know of in different areas they build it different ways. So we pondered, hey, what's the big one word sentence you can cover it all? You can.
Well, I'm okay, and I know some of the I don't want to say complicated, but everything is, there's so much difference. There's so many things that are different out there. I'm okay with the property line generally. I know we got some talks about the flag lots and things like that. I'm okay with the property line. That's cool with me. I just, these private areas though, like under townhomes, I'm thinking Windward Keys as well, Seagate, just like to see all those captured in a way for posterity. That's it. That's one of my that's probably my number one thing is that responsibility there. That being said,
Understood.
Did anybody have anything on that? Okay. I'm going to go to page 17. I had a minor question, and I talked to Larry about some of this stuff too, but maybe there's nothing to be done, but making the homeowner responsible for freezing, tampering, or vandalism of the water meter issued by the town. That means the crock, the water meter, the whole design, the depth in the ground. That's all of that stuff's out of the control of the homeowner. And it seems a little unfair to make them responsible for like freezing and things like this when they have no control over. That's on page 17 under
1B.
Yeah, meters
on
and
page 17.
locations. The town is making the property owner responsible for the protection of the meter from damage due to freezing, tampering, and vandalism. What's that? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss something on that?
Yes, water meter is set inside the building. If approved by the town for extenuating circumstances, property owner will be held responsible.
I have no
for
problem with that being on the inside. Yes. If that doesn't apply to outside meters.
That's my place.
Okay.
My water meter's inside my unit.
Okay.
So that should say Larry is responsible.
Okay. So that only applies then with the meters inside. Okay. That's good. Page 19 under penalties, I want to bring everybody's attention to $1,000 fine, municipal infraction if tampering with town water system. Because there's another section, brand here, but there's another section that talks about if you circumvent the meter, that's theft, that's a criminal act. There should be like a $5,000 fine for that, and you should
Well, actually, you have to, just like anything else with code enforcement, you have to go to civil court, and I've been there with it already. We've had that happen.
Yeah.
Not when I was code enforcement officer, but before. But yeah, I actually went to court and testified against that. The judge sets the fine.
Judge sets the fine.
Yeah, and he
Is it
also.
based on what our parameters are, like
He
up to
he
5,000
has the
max?
customer make restitution and then sets any sort of fine he wants.
And
We don't have any control over that then.
it's a civil thing, so it's similar to a theft.
We can't
They-
just
They
install
have
and
to
have a
actually
fine.
pay
if-
restitution for what was stolen. So
Right.
basically, it equals to how much water we estimated they stole.
Right. Plus
Well,
any
the court does-
equipment.
The court does ask you, the prosecutor they ask you, the party, what were your damages? I mean, there is input there to the judge's fine. That's what they do.
Yeah,
And that's what they do for a living.
that's just one of
So-
those spots
so
where
the
somebody
judge knows
was a
in-
criminal and it's
The
like,
judge knows in advance.
what's the recourse
Yeah.
there for them? Okay, we'll give the money back. That's not enough for me.
So
Okay.
they asked me, I said 6 million gallons.
All right, fair enough. Let's see. With me. All right, page 20, 7.3, connection to public sewer. Same thoughts regarding,
100 feet.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, there being a lack of transition and for people that have legitimate septic systems. Yeah, absolutely.
You would actually ask the chair, but you could go ahead. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at those two patient gentlemen over there on the.
Yeah,
right, hoping
Pat
they
was
get their
trying
turn.
to go down
And
and then.
you're going to have this isn't our last go.
Circle back around.
We need to really let these guys talk.
I don't think it's an issue, but 8.5, page 22, wind pumps are required. All sewage pumps will require a permanent connection to a standby generator capable of running the pump. I mean, occasionally I see where there's a situation there where the town has to enforce that, require somebody to have something, If you're a single family homeowner though, and you've got like a small lift pump in your basement, or you're on one of those bigger ejector pumps, I don't think it's the town's responsibility to make sure that they're on the generator. The fact that you have that language in there is good, and I think it insulates you from someone coming around saying, hey, my power was out, you got to pay for my basement backing up.
This is more for commercial development in town, not so much the single family. This is for a
Right.
developer coming to town that want to propose 100 grinder pumps. So one of the conditions, just like in Chesapeake Village, if you're on a grinder pump, it was mandated by the town that you do have a backup generator. We put that cost on the developer.
And the town ends up taking all of that at the end, right? You end up,
No, that's owned by the homeowner.
well, no, I meant, well, like the generators in Richfield Station, there's a backup generator for the pump down there, right?
Oh, that's for the pump station.
Pump
This is-
station,
this
right.
is for the individual grinder pump at the house. So yes, we do. So if it gets to the town owned, yeah, sure, we own all of our own generators at the pump station.
Okay, well, I don't think that it's an issue.
Okay.
I had a question about, in Appendix A, the reinspection fees. This was something that, Holly, you said we had previously had.
Yes, we adopted a new Appendix A with utility fund. That's been adjusted.
I don't know. I know we've already talked about it. The reinspection fee, though, visit per EDU, it seems like that $60 is low. If you're reinspecting, they're not following instructions somewhere, somehow, and you got to go back out there. It seems like that could be the same rate as the initial inspection. That's just an observation. I think that's enough for right now.
Okay. Keith.
All right, thank you. Thank you for all the work you did on this too. It's great. I have lots of little comments in here that I'm just going to give to you, Larry, after this is all done. And I had two and a half kind of larger comments. They've already been touched on to an extent. I certainly agree with Valerie and what she was saying in terms of Part D and let's see, on page 14, which on my copy is in red.
Yes, I put that in
Right,
red to
yeah.
draw everyone's attention.
Yeah,
to it.
Okay.
It won't be in red in the final version.
did a
Okay.
good job with this one.
And the other thing I wanted to add about that was to consider maybe adding in minus administration fees when you talk about giving back their money after 2 years, because it's a toll on the staff to
Right.
take that money in and give it back out. Kind of
You know,
deal.
we're all about that.
Yeah. And then also, council person Morris touched upon the with the septic tanks and the 200 feet. I think that the discussion went, I like where the discussion went, and I was glad to hear how it's being handled by the mayor and plans to be handled. Because that was another big concern that I've heard about too, is
Absolutely,
forcing
yeah.
people, off of a working septic system into ours, which,
Keith, there was one thing I wanted to mention about that too. When Jay was talking about the G Street incident, and we may have mentioned it in town council before, but just so you folks know, those people, I immediately began working with them and the county so that they are now trying to get grant money to hook up with.
Oh,
They were eligible for grant money for a new septic, and since they couldn't install a new septic, the county began working with them for grant money to hook up to our system.
okay.
So just so you folks know that's available.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's good to know. And so then just the other one, I just wanted to ask while I'm here, there was an abbreviation which I don't think was defined. I couldn't find it. I think the first time it appears is on page 7, POTW. And then it's used several times after that, but I couldn't find the definition for that. What does that mean?
It's publicly owned treatment works. It's the federal word for our water reclamation treatment plant. If you go through the Clean Water Act, they talk about POTWs all through there. So we left that term in there just so there is some compatibility with the Federal Clean Water Act.
Okay. So yes, I would just say, put the definition in at some point, and that's really all I had to ask about right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So having seen this 3+ years ago, a couple times during the work you guys done, and then seeing it now, I just want to add my commendations to this as well. This is really in really great shape. So kudos to everyone who was involved in that. Just a couple of things I want to touch on that have been discussed already, not to reiterate the conversation, but just maybe add a suggestion. First on page 14, this infamous red language. So on the third line, it says the contribution charge shall be refunded to the property owner. I think it may be worth considering, certainly because it applies now, where that refund in our budgets would come from. Because our capital connection charges go to the utility fund. So I think it's worth including in here that any refund of capital contribution charges would come from our utility fund to pay back.
Why does that have to be in the ordinance?
Yeah, that's my question. Why would you put it there? Not that we don't agree with you. Just why
Well,
would you put it there?
so
The
where
purpose-
would this, no, I understand what
The
you're saying.
purpose of the
I understand.
ordinance is to tell people, users, what the rules are.
Right.
Not
Right,
not
but,
internal for how Dale's going to handle the refund.
well, I'm offering it for consideration,
Okay.
but I think maybe if we're speaking to future administrations
Ah.
on this, we could be saying that, the fact that we expect when we approve this, that any refunds would come out of the utility fund, not the rainy day fund, not the general fund reserve, but the utility fund, because
And-
that's where those charges go to when we receive them. They should be refunded
And my
from the
response
same
would be
place.
whatever the council's pleasure is. I mean, I agree with Larry.
Fair point.
Philosophically, I don't believe in putting it there, but if that's what the council wants, then that's what we should put
No,
there.
fair point. It's just, I'm offering the suggestion.
No, it's good.
And then the next on page 15, again, this is the 21A. Again, this is a suggestion on the fourth line. Again, we've talked about this, Larry and I and Greg and others. numerous times over the years. And that conversation has already been discussed tonight. But my suggestion is in the fourth line, it says, unless the owner makes application to the town for extenuating circumstances. Extenuating circumstances is very broad. So anyone who has extenuating circumstances to them, it's extenuating, whether we, the town, feel so or not. So I don't know if it's practical to give some examples, perhaps, of what the town would consider extenuating circumstances. I'm thinking probably not, because that those might change over the years. But I have a little concern with that because it's very broad. What they consider extenuating circumstance, and they have maybe in their mind a viable reason to make application. Maybe the town doesn't, and there's a source of conflict there. So, but more to the point, I want to jump to page 29. And on the top of that, I see there's a note that says to insert new Appendix B, application for water and sewer service. So I may suggest that an additional page or form be added to Appendix B to allow a template for making application for an extenuating circumstance for not applying for water and sewer service.
Well,
Do you understand my point?
yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean,
Because that seems like the right place to put it.
that sounds fair.
What's again, and hypothetically, make application to the town. What is that? Is that an email? Is that a phone call? Is that a letter? Is that a form? Do I need something from a professional service that justifies why I believe this is extenuating? It's very broad.
Yeah.
So I think if we provide some guidance in this case, perhaps a small template form that a user, a homeowner, could use as a template to make application for extenuating circumstances, I think that might be a benefit. That's my point.
Yeah. Okay.
For consideration.
I'm going to,
And then just one other question, quick question. Is this, before we vote on it, will this be made available for public review or in comment before we put on the website, I assume, before we vote on it?
well, let me just go step by step. Okay. We're I'm not close to introducing this yet. Okay. But your question is beyond that. When will this be available for public comment? I think that's a great question. I think that when you're updating a document like this since 1985, the town has just grown, unbelievably, since then. I brought up one issue that was very important to our citizenry. He said he's definitely heard it, about, forcing people on. I think with something like this, okay, given, I would really say that we need to, broadcast this document as best as possible to get it out there, to get it, send it, when we are ready to introduce this, to send it to the public, like we'd really like to do, email blast, as they go on the town website. I think we really do want to encourage, everybody as often and as much to read this. Probably, one in every 50 guy or gal will do it, but we still got to spread it out there so they can, look at it. So yes, we definitely need to be sure that this thing is, and I appreciate that, because sometimes things can just slip through without, really making the public aware that this is a document that you want to read.
Okay. Well, that's the extent of my comments for this round.
Okay. A couple things, and I'm going to let Larry say a couple things before we go back around. But I really think that, this first discussion and, here with the council was absolutely great. I mean, it started out well with some good points, Valerie. I think the group, went back to a few of them right away. And I'm sure if we started the other way around, it probably would have, went the same way, so that's good. The points by everybody was very healthy. I think that, I'm guessing, okay, that when we end discussion on this tonight, that You're not done yet.
Oh, no, I know.
Yeah. We'll have to, give them an updated version from the,
Well,
the work session,
Yes. we said, if you got edits or get them to them.
Yeah. That always helps,
That's why we sent it out several times asking for input.
Right. So I think we're going to go at when we leave here, we're going to go at that again. And I have a feeling we're going to have a work session again to really be before we tie the knot. We'll take what came out of this meeting, incorporate it, and unless the council really feels that it's sound and we can go, I'm getting the feeling that we can give it one last work session before we send it, because it's very important. And it's
Almost 35 years, what's the rush?
Yeah, it's very important, so like I was saying, I'm not even at the point of introducing anything yet, just to let the council know where I'm at. This is a great first round. I'll let Larry say a few words. We'll go around again, and then, Larry's got oodles of stuff to update, and I think we'll go to the next step after that. So did you want to add anything to what I said?
Just what I said. If you've got edits or suggested things, if you've got at least even a couple of thoughts as to what might be in that. After 2 years, I'm pretty well tapped out on ideas, so I could use some help.
Okay, let's go around, and then we'll try to do this as expeditiously as possible, knowing we're going, we're not done with this.
Sure. All right. Just a few more. They were more minor, so
Why don't you just send those to me?
Yeah, I was gonna
because it's
say,
for
I'm sorry,
discussion.
if there's something mild, minor, like, if you just want to send it, or
Well, no, it's kind of like for discussion. I mean,
that's what
'cause I'm
how you
not-
feel it should be, go ahead.
I just want everyone's opinion.
You have the floor, go.
Yeah, or at least hear what my thought is on it. Just like with the second one I had before, my three important ones, it was decided not to be important because of the discussion. What's up? Okay. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Nothing like being laughed at. Yeah, on page 4, under EDUs, it says EDUs shall be paid for prior to issuance of a zoning permit. Is that occurring currently?
We
You
couldn't
asked
hear you.
if the
right.
payment for
EDUs
EDUs takes place at zoning permit?
It says EDUs shall be paid for prior to issuance of a zoning permit unless otherwise approved by the town. Is that currently occurring?
It is now, yes.
When you say it is now, it's like any sort of large scale development that's occurred in town has paid their full capital connection fees.
If not, then they're on stop until they do.
They're on stop until they do.
Correct.
Okay, and that's going to be the ongoing sort of. So I know that
So they would pay for it when they submit their application, it's approved. Yes.
because
the
one of the things
connections.
that's occurred previously is that we've made agreements that
Yes.
folks can pay over time. And this does not allow for them to pay over time. This says that when you get your zoning permit, you will pay this.
Yes.
Is that, am I
That's
reading
correct.
that correct?
That's how we're operating currently.
Good, I like that. And then in that same area, it says EDUs are assigned to a legal property and parcel and not transferable. Is that under our current policy and our current water and sewer manual? Is that currently occurring? No transfer of
We haven't had
EDUs.
any transfers of EDUs that I'm aware of, Connie, unless you have something
Parcel-based.
historical.
So like those decade-old capital connection fees were bought, it says here, are assigned to a specific parcel. And so those would have been assigned to specific parcel.
Correct.
And not transferable.
Correct.
Okay, good. I mean, that, I just want, basically what my goal is to have everybody on the same playing field, all fair and equitable. Everybody gets the same rules, whether they have old connections, current connections, or whatever. That's my goal.
I don't want to say that. I don't quite understand.
All right, it says that here, I'm sorry, flip the page. EDUs are assigned to a legal property or parcel. That means like, take where the old Stennis restaurant was. There are, if you look on like Calvert County GIS. I'm going to get it wrong, but let's say there's 10 different parcels associated with that little spot down there where the restaurant was. And so that applies to me that if this says a legal property parcel, that has a series of those taps that were purchased and that they're not transferable to anywhere else that that developer may own, that it has to be associated with those parcels. And that's the current policy, and it's also the policy in this document.
Yes.
And that's cool. I mean, because you want it to be fair and equitable that way. Did I explain that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm with you. Thank you.
On page 11, I want to give a huge thank you. A few years back, I brought someone into Connie, maybe 4 years ago, that was having problems with payment and turnoff. And section 1.6 is extremely well written and would have taken care of that situation in very clear, good language, because that was quite traumatic for those individuals when they were getting their water turned off.
You make a very good point, Valerie, and, this is a document that we can refer to if we have to. Just like Jay said with the property line issues, there are extenuating circumstances. We don't always have to shove this document in somebody's face to know that they need help, or to know that there's some way we can make it work for them. So.
But it's nice to see
we
so
gave
much of
this
it
a lot-
addressed.
That part of it a lot of thought. We wanted to make sure we had something that had some teeth that we could stick to when we had to, but it doesn't have to be that way either. I mean, we're a small community. We know when things happen, such as the fires. We made some adjustments to that.
And it's nice to just see it work. I mean, those situations be accounted for in this spot. And then, if I may, there was a comment by Councilman Morris regarding transition, and I have a question regarding that. So let's just go to page 20. You can refer to it, section 7.3. And when you were talking about, should there be a transition? I agree with you. And I was wondering if that transition could be considered in section 7.3, generally within 6 months of such notice. Is that the transition that you're looking for, or do you need a longer time frame? Okay.
I was making is that sewer lines within you have perfectly fine septic system. Shouldn't be forced. 6 months, a year,
Absolutely.
they shouldn't be forced.
I agree with that. All right, that's all I
Could I
have.
add to that real quick?
Gotta be borderline.
Go ahead. Yeah.
And I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's also the basis of what my question was about the extenuating circumstances, because I see that as an extenuating circumstance. If I just put $15,000 into a top of the line system,
Right.
and it's only 3 years old, and I have expected 12 more years left in it to have to switch, to tap in, and I would consider that extenuating circumstance. But does the town consider that extenuating circumstance? That's what I was asking for as well. Same idea.
Right. And so, my final, I look forward to whatever happens on page 14, the red font. I look forward to that applying to everyone in town, so that is fair and equitable, even those that are current tap holders. And I like the idea of adding, I forgot who mentioned it, but administrative fees, I think, is a really solid idea.
Thank you, Valerie. I think your comments overall were very solid, so I appreciate that.
Can I just offer a comment?
Sure.
I think the manual is very well done, and I just wanted to commend the authors.
We're working on that. We'll wait till his work is done before we give you that bonus.
The only remaining comments I have for this tonight is I'd like to bring everybody to the appendix B. The language at the bottom of the reporting form. I think you know this section is. There's a section that talks about the grease oil trap and it will be quarterly reporting. The town has established, or is going to establish whatever the reporting basis is. The reporting form says that all reports within 2 weeks of cleaning and or maintenance or on a quarterly basis. That could be interpreted too, like, okay, well, I'm going to take this back every 3 years, and I just got to turn it in 2 weeks.
Well,
think it's, if you exceed more than the quarterly, which some people do, as long as it's within 2 weeks of that, when it happened, or minimally quarterly. I think that's the intent.
The intent is 4 times a year.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there are people that do it more often, so if they do,
Because it says 2 weeks of cleaning or quarterly. So it's, if you get it clean, you turn the report in within 2 weeks. If you didn't get it clean, you got to turn it in quarterly.
But you must still turn it in quarterly.
Yes.
Plus or minus some time.
Yes.
Correct. Correct. I just want to make sure somebody who can interpret that. The other thing I wanted to point out was, well, in my opinion, the person that's representing this reporting form, requiring them to maintain all records for a period of 2 years, that should probably be 5 years. Just a comment? Sure. 7.2 on page 20 seems to be covered in Article 9. It might be redundant. Article 9. Article 9, Section 9.2 talks in depth about prohibited waters and wastes. 7.2 might be redundant. I'll leave that up to the office. Confirming that. It needs to
Can't have to
stay
leave it
for any
there.
reason. I'm fine with that.
That cleared Alyssa's review. I think she actually signed off on that. That there was some legal basis for that general prohibition.
If the attorney wanted it there, it's no big deal, that's where it'll stay.
And that's cool.
Yeah.
My only comment is it seems to be covered in the Article
Mhm.
9. That's correct. I had a conversation with Larry about this. This is about stuff that's not in the manual that I know was being discussed. Single-family homes that build out an apartment in the basement, and you've got like almost, now in a way, that's almost like 2 EDUs.
I hear you.
If you've got illegal use of a single-family home, like we still have ongoing in Richfield Station, that I know the town has done the best they can following up with that individual. I mean, that's how the town becomes aware of some of those problems, because you get complaints. I wasn't referring to anything in particular. I was referring to something I didn't see in there.
13.
Section 1.
Okay.
I would just like to see there be something in there. We don't want, we're not the police going to run around, and if people are renting or out, and that's, I don't.
The one thing that we have done to try to accommodate some of that is that's where we've added another fixed fee to the home. If we know that there are 2 families living there and have been able to prove it, we add another fixed fee and another bay restoration fee to the bill quarterly, along with of course, their usage is always higher.
That's covered under B.
Mm-hmm.
That was just a observation. I know it was a comment. That's the extent of where you feel. I know Richfield still have that guy. He's got people living in his house. 3 different.
You're absolutely right. And when Valerie mentioned the EDU thing, that's what I was gonna reiterate, and I forgot, was that I think a lot of times we have more people that are using more water residentially than we do commercially. That because their residential customers are paying for 1 EDU. I mean, and I think a lot of times the aggression, or what's the word I'm looking here? The egregiousness probably is a lot more on the resident sometime than the commercial user.
So in the town's judgment there, then you're also considering water usage.
Oh, I look at it all the
I'm fine
time.
with all of that. That's all fair.
Keith? Okay, great job, council. Obviously, we're going to go back at this again, but this is really a great hour and 20 minutes to get, really move along, so we did. General paving RFP. I think Holly wants to.
So the town went out to bid using our highway user revenue funds that we receive to complete. Our bid was a little over 28,000 square yards of mill and overlay paving work throughout town. We set up a pre-bid mandatory meeting. We did have 8 bidders attend that pre-bid meeting. And I've put before town council the results of the bid that was received on Friday. As of right now, with reviewing with Jay, Beltway Paving is likely going to be the recommended contractor. They're out of Charles County. They've completed work with the town in the past. We have a good relationship with them, and they're actually just recently wrapped up some work for Public Works currently. The benefit of working with Beltway Paving is that they do offer one single point of contact, which over the last 2 years, we've used a different company that was the most economical and have had some issues with scheduling and contacts. So that is a great value to the town. Just as a note, we are in the process of going right back out to bid for the next fiscal year with paving. So we'll be conducting a lot of paving in the next couple months. And Dale, if you want to cover the financial side and
Yeah.
budget.
Be happy to. So for fiscal year 19, what we had built into the budget is 259,000. We've used about 10,000, so we've got about $250,000 left for the current fiscal year. For fiscal year 20, we built 345,000, and I think everyone's aware, but those funds are based on what the highway user, what we get in terms of revenue. I don't know if this can be a consideration by the town, but obviously we'll encumber the funds for fiscal year 19. But potentially, maybe what we could do is use the funds for fiscal year 19 as well as dip into fiscal year 20, if that's a consideration. So.
One thing, in speaking with a contractor today, they actually offered to extend their pricing to accommodate some additional work. So I can speak with our town attorney to see if that would be beneficial to the town. But we are looking at that as well to kind of combine those two projects for the 2 fiscal years.
Yes, Dirk.
There's paving going on right now. Can you clarify to all of us that the paving that's going on now and how it differs than what we're talking about right now?
Sure. So that was for fiscal year. That was for the previous fiscal year. We had that paving was awarded by the council, and we had
In-
significant weather delays.
For 19. So that's
Yes.
19 highway user revenue money.
Or that's actually 18. I'm sorry.
18's money that's being implemented in 19. Right, I see. Okay. Okay, that's good information. Okay. And apropos of nothing, we can use highway user revenue for other things other than paving. So I just want to plant the seed because there are some, I mean, certainly there's paving needs. And I know you have a priority list of where the paving needs are. And I guess I'm just making this suggestion because we don't have to just extend paving if it's not necessarily needed or maybe a lesser priority, because we can use that for other things transportation wise in the town. And I just want to remind everyone.
Right. Do you have any specific thoughts?
Well, I mean, we can use, there's a lot of different things we can use it for. I mean, any
Right.
kind of travel, pedestrian travel,
Right.
bike travel, vehicular travel.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
historically we've always, tried to match our highway user revenue allotment to our paving needs.
Right.
Which if they're certainly needed, they're needed. But I think it's also important, as perhaps those numbers are increasing, we can keep in our mind that we can consider using some of those funds for
Yeah,
other things as well.
and to support that, to support your point, as you know, the fiscal year that begins on July 1 is the first of the 5-year increase that we received from our legislators up in Annapolis. Okay, it was a significant increase, and I think it's going to be about $340,000 for the next 5 years, starting the budget that we did just pass and moving on, which is wonderful news. And we're all happy and we can catch up on backup projects that weren't done and move on. But what I think, to your answer, is basically, looking ahead as we start to become a pedestrian-friendly town and, struggle that way. Okay, and we know what we're going to be getting from the state. It's law, so we can plan for stuff like that. I think that's something Jay knows. I think it's once again, thank you, Senator Miller et al. For that guarantee of funds for the next 5 years. So yes, great. And you'll be here to make sure.
Well, and it's
don't
not
forget
just
it.
that, and I'm not just touting, my committee's
I
work,
am.
but I'm just saying that we can be open-minded.
Absolutely.
To some
Sure.
degree
Yeah.
with our HER funds, because
and if I
it does
can-
allow
Yeah.
for some.
So we
flexibility.
lost it. When I started here, we were at this level and it was cut by 90%. So we do have some catching up to do, but we're getting there. So there is going to definitely be looking forward where at the time when we were cut to 10%, we weren't milling anywhere. We were overlaying, we were kind of band-aiding. Those are the funds we had. So I can foresee with this chart and the spreadsheet I have, we're going to catch up. So before this money runs out, so we will need other projects. We're surely not going to waste any money and pave something just because. So
Yeah.
that's a good thought. And obviously it's going to take some planning to get that going, but that's my intent too.
Heath, thank you, Derek.
Yeah. Could you go over the budget considerations or the budget information again? I didn't get that all jotted down here.
Sure. So for the current fiscal year 19, we had budgeted 259,000. We've used about 10,000 year to date on a couple of small things. I mentioned, Keith, for fiscal year 20, we have 344,000. And we talked potentially, or I brought up maybe potentially we could use some of the fiscal year 20 for this particular bid if we're interested.
Okay, thank you.
You're
That's what
welcome.
I missed that 2020
Okay.
number there. So then this fiscal year 19 then, and we're thinking Beltway paving is 323 change there. So then the difference would then come from
So for this fiscal year, we were discussing decreasing the square yards that are covered so that it would match the what we have budgeted for the year. And then
Yeah. So
next year, catching up with the rest of it with next fiscal year.
And I want to speak to that a little bit because I've done this for a little while now. Somehow these companies know, it's public knowledge, highway user revenue, what we're budgeting every year. So I always put out more than what I know they can cover. Because if you put out what you think it is or less, somehow it works out to the number they know we have. So I always anticipate that they're going to run out somewhere. It happened last year. It happened to be on our private owned road to Harbor Road. So I said, hey, when we run out, we're going to stop it here. And then when you come back, we'll pick it up. So I anticipated with the price of asphalt and things going up that the price would come in higher than the money we got. But using our score sheet, we're just going to pick up at the bottom one and adjust it to where it works at. And that's where we'll start moving forward for the next one. Because I've learned you never give them less than what you think we have the money for because they figure it out quick.
okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you.
Coverage. There was great coverage on the bid for this. I have no problem with Beltway paving. I guess to add on to Councilman Favre's point there, might be important for us to know what other things associated with the roads that we can use that money for, such as can we use it for stormwater management improvements along the roads, things like that. That's all. And just to keep that stuff in mind moving forward. And I would probably caution this body to use any of the funds, thus documenting the use of those funds for anything that was not clearly highway user either, because we don't want them to. They just re-upped it. We don't want to give them a reason to,
We don't want to be on the bad list.
Yeah, that's it. So my only comment on that.
Thank you. Larry.
My only comment was I was just impressed with 6 bids and how close the bids were. I mean, there's only 27% separation between the low and the high. That's pretty impressive. So I think we got good numbers there. Thank you.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. That's a great point. I was really happy to hear when Holly was describing it that it's a local company, Beltway Paving, who we've done business with before. I think that really helps. So if I did the figures right, fiscal 2019, we would use 249,000 because we spent 10, and then 249 minus the 323, which is the bid. So we'd be taking about 74,000 out of fiscal year 20. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
All right, and I think that's completely rational. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, especially since we were delayed. And then for Jay, you mentioned that we all know that we were cut back on highway user fees for a long time. And I know we were doing lots of bandages. And I know you're saying that we're working on the priority list. But do we have an idea of when we'll actually be caught up or?
It's kind of like painting the Bay Bridge. As soon as you get
It
to the
never
other end, you
happens.
go back. But
Absolutely.
I'd have to do the score sheet, and I also made a map, and I can share it with the council later what we've done and when, and what I'm going to call the proper procedure. We have band-aided, skimmed over some places in town. We didn't mill them. So what we've done now that we know that the money's coming, I'm going to say we're doing it right. We're doing a 2-inch mill overlay. Some of our neighborhoods, like our neighborhood, is newer, so I'm going to say in 2 or 3 years we're going to be at 90%. There's always going to be a road or two in need, but we're going to be back to where we were prior to the cutting the funds.
Yeah, and
So
I
it's
mean,
coming.
I walked my dog back in the neighborhood, so I saw the quality of the work that was done back there
Sure.
recently. I mean, so you can tell the difference when it's just an overlay and when it's milled. It looks great.
Yeah.
Other than that, you know, like Larry said, it was pretty impressive how close those bids came in.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
pretty,
it's pretty cool.
absolutely.
Right. No, nothing else.
Okay, thank you. Walkable Community Sidewalk Conceptual Plan RFP.
Get the summary. So the town also went out to bid for the sidewalk conceptual planning. That is a result of the Walkable Community's extensive work in establishing a set of priorities for the town. So the goal of the RFP was to create a master plan and then drill down on a couple key priority projects that the Walkable Communities Committee had identified. So this bid was sent out to 738 bidders through eMaryland Marketplace. We had a successful pre-bid mandatory meeting with 9 design firms attending. I've put before Town Council the results of the bids that came in on Friday. The Walkable Communities Committee did review those bid materials with Councilman Favre over the weekend, and we do have an interview set up for the design firms for June 12th. For the Walkable Community Committee to ask questions of the firms, and we're hoping to incorporate Chris Jakubiak into that as well. So if there's any questions, and Derek, did you want to mention anything?
No, not really. I think, I mean, you summarized it well. I mean, we've been talking about this and it was coming, and we are going to vote on it this month. So we've got some work to do before our council meeting to select or make our recommendation to the council. So that is coming. But I mean, that meeting on the 12th is open to anyone. If anyone wants to come in and hear what they have to say, please do. It's in the afternoon, but it is open. The other thing I want to say, and actually ties back into the previous conversation. So if you're looking at these bids, you see that all of them are, I mean, you may not, you know that our where our budget is and our current budget on our committee, it's more than 100K more than what's on these bids. So we've got excess in our budget, which is fine. And we're not purporting to waste it or anything, but perhaps if it's financially prudent, maybe instead of dipping into our 2020 HUR funds, perhaps we could use the excess money in the sidewalk budget and move it to the paving budget. And then perhaps next budget, if there's some sidewalk needs that I don't have budgeted for, perhaps we could use HUR money for 2020 for sidewalk work. I offer that up because it appears there's going to be some excess funds in the 19 sidewalk line item in the
That's
budget.
what I was alluding to in my comment. Yeah.
So I offer it. I mean, for consideration.
Yeah,
It may or may,
it's-
it may
I
be
think-
easier to do because it's an action on our part rather than dipping into 2 fiscal years of highway user revenues. But I offer it as a possible solution to that. If it makes sense to pave more now and save
Yeah.
money rather than splitting it within 2 years.
We'll figure that out.
I just throw that out.
Thank
But
you.
it appears that we'll have some extra funds there.
Very good.
Bill, do you want to cover anything on finance?
Well, just building on the comments that were just made for fiscal year 19 in capital expenditures under sidewalks, we built 305,000. For fiscal year 20, we built 50. So just ties to that point.
Any comments, Keith?
Just a couple questions. On June 12th, what time is that meeting?
The schedule's not confirmed yet. I will send it out to everyone. It will be in the afternoon. Looks like it'll start at 1:30. We're going to do 30-minute interview slots.
Okay.
So it should run between about 1:30 and 4.
Okay. And all, I guess, 4 of these folks are invited to that?
Yes, all 4 would be invited. Correct, Dale? Derek, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, surprised that there were only 4 bidders on that. Is there any reason why BAI didn't bid on it? Because BAI, I thought that, I would think that they would have bid on that. They were invited. 'Cause they're
I
doing.
can
the
ask
con-
for feedback. I didn't hear. They're doing the Route 261
Yeah,
project
thought
right
they were already
now.
in town and why
They were
wouldn't
here. I
Yeah,
mean,
they were
here
here.
for the pre-bid, but they
Mhm.
chose not to submit a
bid.
proposal. So-
Yeah, okay. I'm not necessarily hung up on the low bid. The first, let's see here, RK&K. On one hand, I think the town could say that is throw that bid out because they didn't follow instructions and break things out. However, if it were this body, well, I'm going to lean heavily on your group, some of this. If you wanted to take the whole thing as a lump sum and decided that RK&K was the way to go, I would be okay with that. But if you were to only do part of it, see, they didn't break this out, in which case you almost have to throw them out. You follow what I'm saying?
Well, I do, and I mean, Holly can speak to it, but she has gone back to talk to them.
Right. I did ask them for some additional clarification, and they did provide some breakout of their pricing, but they didn't price it how we had requested because they felt it was a challenge to do so. They felt like it was more comprehensive to provide the lump sum.
Of course.
So, right.
I mean, and what's, I think more, since all these come well under our budget, which is great, but certainly to be reflective of that. But I think what's more important in some regards is, do these companies understand what the deliverable really is, what we're expecting as a deliverable, and are they prepared to provide that? Because that's the key moving forward, is to take the product of this action and apply for grants and other actions to move forward. And we want to make sure that the company that we choose fully understands exactly, what we're looking for, and they're able to provide that.
I know it's in capable hands, so I don't have any further questions about it.
I just shared the same concern, Mr. Morris, about the lack of the detail in the RK&K bid as to whether or not that then disqualified them. I don't know what the wording in the documents was about doing that. If that was a requirement, then they're non-responsive.
But I'm sorry, but just one more time, if it was this body's, they wanted to do the whole thing and not break it apart, I wouldn't rule them out then, because they did provide the lump sum.
We do
It would
occasionally.
depend on what the document said. If the document said, do this, and they didn't,
I agree with you. It's very frustrating when people don't follow instructions.
We have a lot of bidders actually do that often where they won't provide some of the itemized pricing. That's not uncommon.
And then they
Sorry?
come in with the lowest bid because it's not
Fair
itemized
enough.
out. And that it does beg a question. But no, I have no comments. Everything's been asked.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Kelms Field Drainage Maintenance RFP. Get that, Holly?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the town also went out to bid, and this is a budgeted item to maintain the drainage field that is near the dredge containment facility that runs directly off of Kellums Field. That drainage area has not been maintained in approximately 15 years. Is that correct, Jay? So it's in need of some clearing to allow for positive flow through the swale. So we went out to bid. This was sent to 109 bidders. We had 6 bidders attend the pre-bid meeting and received 2 bids. As of right now, and in looking at recommendations and background, we are leaning towards State Construction. They're a contractor out of PG County. They perform between 4 and 5 million annually for private and public projects. Their projects typically range about $70,000 to $80,000 range, up to about $1 million. They have experience completing projects for the Maryland Department of Transportation, Montgomery County, the city of Gaithersburg, Anne Arundel County, and the city of Frederick. So for budgeted for this fiscal year was a capital improvement item. And Dale, did you want to give that number?
Sure. For fiscal year 19, we had budgeted in capital expenditures $90,000 for this project.
The recommendation would be the $45,000 to complete the work. I will mention that there is some work from Southern Maryland dredging that we had held aside, final payment that I believe you're all aware of, that I did draft them a letter allowing them the opportunity to do some of that hand digging and clearing of that drainage swale. We were waiting on an answer for a permit, whether or not we needed an MDE permit. We do not need an MDE permit. So we've opened the door that they could do that work, and then we'd release the remaining funds to them.
So I guess we're going to vote on this in council. Is anyone here familiar with that ditch or know what's going on? You want me to explain a little, or are we all on the same page? Sure, because it was new to me. So apparently it was maintained by the town and somehow it fell off the radar over the years. But on the north end of the Kellums Field facility, believe it or not, the parking lot and everything on the south end drains under that field through 2 pipelines, storm drain north, and it heads to the back of E Street. Right here behind Town Hall. 26th Street over the hill drains the same way. That drains out into a catch basin that's in the little wooded area there, starts draining west, then it heads south and goes into Fishing Creek. So if you were to look at the large baseball field, the outfield, left field, if you're standing at home plate, from left field all the way over to where the woods are behind Town Hall, there's a drainage ditch in there that was maintained by the town at some point about every 6 years. It hasn't been maintained. It's got some vegetation, trees, phragmites. It's filled up to the point where all the storm drain lines are holding water under the field and different issues. And it needs to be maintained because it's causing some flooding on E Street in the bottom of Elm Lane. And when we were at the dredge spoils site, all that was brought to attention and we kind of looked at it all, and now we realized it's past time to do it, so we're going to do it. Any questions?
I have one question. Well, it's really just a comment. I'm surprised it only got 2 bids. That's easy grading work. That's like all day long for a lot of people.
Well, and it was one reason I requested mandatory pre-bid. So I took them back there myself, and it would be easy if it wasn't confined by the ball field, the fence, the existing bench that's there is very minute. So you have to work from a bench to the south side, reach out into the north side. It's going to involve a long reach hoe, a track dump. So even though it's kind of a surgical area to clean, it's going to require some unique equipment to get it done. And not most of the bidders that came out there were planning on renting it or borrowing it. And I know for a fact that this company owned at least one piece of equipment, and we're going to do some follow-up.
Makes some sense.
I've never met them before, but after talking to them and meeting them out there, I'm sure they're more than capable. Holly and I talked, as long as there's no red flags, I don't see any reason they couldn't do it. But I have not made those follow-up calls yet, but I will before council.
Okay.
Okay, well, I would lean towards y'all's recommendation.
Okay, very good. Budget. Ordinances 1912, 1913, and 1914. Dale, I'll give you the
Great, thank
floor
you.
here.
So I thought it'd be helpful to provide the town council some verbiage behind what was driving these 3 ordinances requests. The first one is for the general fund budget. And we have taken pretty good tracking of the B Street expenses we've had this year, and it's actually close to about 500,000. Obviously, a lot of those were not planned, and it's impacted 4 line items in their general budget. And you can see it's the legal counsel, the planning and zoning, engineering, and property maintenance. So that's the reason for the proposal. The good news is planning or proposing to offset it with admission and amusement tax. It's about 175,000 in total. The expenses or the increase to the budget are very close in line to the increases that we can attribute to B Street. So, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to start with each one?
Yeah,
and
we'll-
then get
we'll-
feedback before
Yeah,
we
we'll
go?
take,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. We'll take one budget at a time.
So that would be my summary, and then I guess we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, and I think before I do take questions, and I will start with the Vice President. You mentioned the B Street, and I think you and I went over some numbers just to kind of get a feel for what actually has, in totality, did that our work there cost the town. We're at about 482,000. Is that correct total? Just up to-
482, 753, 46. Pretty good.
Yeah. So obviously that drove some of the, general fund budget. And the only other comment that I'll make is, and this is something that I've said when I was on council, is basically, we, as the town grows, in my opinion, just my opinion, I think, we need to understand that what also is going to grow is our needs for legal, for planning, zoning, engineering. I mean, these there's just more and more issues that, come up as we grow. It's not like the old days. So I think when we're, preparing our budget next year, we need to start to, understand that. And that's my only comment. Valerie, we were going to start with general fund. Did you?
Yeah, just a general question on the general fund, Dale, and that is, so this is our reconciliation for fiscal year 19, right? And so the fiscal year is not over, so, yeah, exactly. And just in previous experience and other, even last year, the year before, the year after, before that, when we started doing line item budgets, the reconciliation didn't occur until like August, September, whatever. Would you consider this a reconciliation?
No.
And therefore, is it, okay, so that's
No.
another document that's coming.
And correct me if I'm wrong. It's my understanding that
He's answering your question, Val.
we'll still have the fiscal year 19 reconciliation. These are areas that we're currently over budget, and we know why we're over budget.
Okay.
So it's just an amendment.
Okay, so we can still have that
Right,
reconciliation.
absolutely.
Okay, that was my question on the general fund. Thank you.
No question. Just want to point out that in the title, it says about the 4th line down, it says from revenue from admissions and admissions taxes. I think it
Sorry
should
about
say
that.
amusements
Okay.
at that point for
Okay.
that second one.
Okay. Okay, very good. Next one, Dale.
Okay. I think the way we had them set in the agenda is the water park, so I will move to the water park. There's two
Okay.
things inside of this one. The big one, obviously, is the work that we did on the Lazy River, as well as earlier this year on the pool pipe. And those two with Medlin, those two combined was about $275,000. So the proposal is that we are going to increase our capital expenditures. We can do it by increasing only 225. That is one of the requests. The second one is similar to B Street. We've been adding up the legal expenses that we have had that we didn't plan for. In the water park, it's about 29,000 and change. Just happens to be the amount that we need to increase our professional fees. So there's two requests. One is increase in our capital expenditures by 225, but I didn't point this out earlier, but let me mention the way we would do that is we currently have about $500,000 in our savings account under the water park. So we'd be taking 225,000 from our savings to get to that amount. And then the professional fees, similar to general fund, what I'm hoping to do is offset it in an area that we're doing really well in revenue, specifically retail sales. So those are the two proposals inside of Water Park. And I guess turn it to questions.
Yes.
So in your opinion, having to remove about half of the current reserves in the water park, is that going to, I mean, we already passed the FY20 budget for the water park. And I don't recall directly, but there were some capital expenditures in there. So are you anticipating a domino effect where having to remove money from the reserve fund now to cover this is going to prevent some expenditure that was planned for in 2020?
No, actually, I think I considered it a positive thing because in the fiscal year 20 budget, we do not have any reserves built under Water Park. Historically, we've always had reserves built in the Water Park. The original plan, as you may recall, was to do the Lazy River in fiscal year 20. So we basically brought it forward.
Did it early, right? But so, okay. Oh, no anticipated hardship then?
No.
Wasn't any additional cost.
No, actually, originally, we thought it was going to be much higher than it ended up being. It was 162,000 for the job.
There weren't any additional costs associated with accelerating
No,
and bringing that.
no.
Okay.
We had savings.
Savings,
That was my only
yes.
question. Thank you.
Okay, in terms of the utility fund budget, when I'm going to start this off by saying we had a $15,000, I'll call it an error in fiscal year 19, and unfortunately, we're going to have it in fiscal year 20 as well. The council may remember we had this this eye chart, I'll call it, where we had all our loans. Well, in one of the loans, the 2014 loan, the MDDE 2014 loan, one of the administrative costs weren't captured. Quite honestly, I probably should have reconciled my predecessors, all her numbers to make sure they all tied, but we had a $15,000 shortage. So we're requesting to take that out of reserves. And specifically, it's an issue that we're going to have to address in fiscal year 20. Unfortunately, on that loan, we won't be able to pay that loan off until 2027. So we'll make sure that it's fixed on a go-forward basis.
We doing questions on the utility fund part of it? Did you lead off?
I haven't yet, but I will.
Okay, okie dokie.
So to
Thanks,
clarify, you're recommending unallocated reserves from the utility fund.
Correct.
And do we have funds in the unallocated reserves in the utility fund?
Correct. We had originally we had $500,000. Then we added another 182.
Okay, so it's
remember?
that
Yeah.
part. It's
Yes.
not. It's not
Yes.
actually the capital connection
Right.
charge part of the utility fund, is what you're saying. It's for the loan repayment. Okay. Okay. So.
This is to cover administrative fees that were not budgeted. Those are costs of the loan.
Yeah, there are a few components in these loans, one being interest. Of course, some of them have some administrative fees. And in the spreadsheet that was done, it took each loan for every year and the impact on interest as well as administrative fees, and they were just missed. And looking back, I should have in fiscal year 19 reconciled, and because it's going to impact us in fiscal year 20 as well. But rest assured, it's corrected now, and but it needs to be addressed for fiscal year 19.
Okay.
This is probably a time to bring up the probably would be good to include another 150,000 in that utility fund to cover the invoice I'm going to submit on the water and sewer manuals.
There you go. What, 3 years work of 50K a year? You come cheap. Guys, what a guy.
Okay, I think I got an explanation. So basically $15,000. And even though it says from unallocated reserves from the general fund, these were previously allocated to the utility fund. Is that correct? So you are not asking for an additional $15,000 from the general fund unallocated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, because if you were, I'd say no. I was getting ready, but that's fine. No more questions.
Okay, very good. We'll stay right where you are. Valerie, council lightning round.
As you'll notice, as Larry did, I think,
What are you
the
doing
big,
this Saturday?
the big trophy is gone temporarily. And actually what's going to happen real quick is, you know how it had filled out all the plaques, all the lines. We're going to get a plaque here in town hall eventually with our winning sort of like medal years. And then they'll start anew for this coming year. So Friday night we have practice. I believe we're down. Dale's going to be a temporary sub on Friday night now, going to paddle with us, see if he likes it. I have one more opening if anyone's interested in paddling, and I think we're going to be down one lady also for practice. Everything's looking good for Saturday morning. I want to express my sincere thank you to Holly and all the help that she's provided, making sure we have a tent and everything else, and giving us her son for the day also. It's going to be a good time. And so I encourage you to come out. I thank you, Derek, for being on the boat. Thank everyone else for contributing. Keith and Greg and Larry were, come down. I know you're going to be at a graduation, so that won't work. But this is a really fun time, and so I hope you come out and enjoy it. Mayor's race is usually about noon, but they don't actually release the race times until about 8:30 that morning. So if anyone's really just dying to know when the Mayor's Cup is scheduled, then we always run early. They do races concurrently. And so we'll probably be early. I'll text you. So if you really want to know when the Mayor's race is, let me know.
Very
Get a
good.
text. But it's going to be fun.
Mr. Larry.
Three things. One, these are all related to economic development. One, tomorrow, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday, we have a TV crew called New Day Cleveland. Fox 8 from Cleveland is going to be here in the Twin Beaches area filming. The idea is they do this, they cast this stuff back in Cleveland then to interest people in visiting places. And the Twin Beaches is going to be featured on this next one. So that's going to be tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday. Reminder, we've got the Moonlight Cruise on June 15th with Dr. Eshelman. Right now, we've got 36 people signed up for that, so we've got plenty of room if anybody else is interested. And then the last thing, again, in terms of advancing our local businesses, on June 21st, the Calvert County Economic Development Advisory Commission is going to have what's called the Beaches Business Walk. So we're going to have representatives from EDAC, myself included, going around and visiting businesses, the idea being to talk to our smaller businesses and just say, what can the county do to help you be more successful? Thank you.
I just had a question about the middle rail at the entrance. Are we still planning on putting the middle rail in outside?
So I actually brought the paperwork with me. They do owe us the center rail, and they owe a little cleanup on the work they did. So I contacted them almost a month ago now and last week, and they said they're going to send someone out. So we haven't paid them, but we're going to have to ring their bell or get someone else to do it and use their money, pay them.
Draw a line in the sand. It's been a long time.
It has.
And the reason I was asking really just, I think it's an improvement what's happened, coming out. But one of the main issues there was having a center rail. So elderly folks can get down. Right. And then my other question is related to, and maybe I missed them. Are we still replacing the lights out front?
So there was
In
some
process.
There was some light updates and also to finish the painting and the little trim on the handwork that we're waiting on that middle rail. So that's still in the planning. Just want to get that middle rail done so they're done.
Okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
No
Very
problem.
good. Keith?
Yeah, just a couple things. So Ken Rasmussen's talk coming up in 2 weeks. We had a cancellation. 2 tickets or 2 spaces are available. I think one got filled today, but there's one left. If anyone's interested, they can go to the website. If that's still right. But just so folks know, you can contact me and I can hook you up to where to go to sign up. The other thing I just wanted to Connie's already gone, but I wanted to recognize Connie and her committee and all the work they did for the Stars and Stripes Festival. I thought it was really well done, had a good turnout, made it to the opening ceremony and then the family fun day. And just thank you again to that group for all the work you did to us.
Just a question. I know you've been working with the county on it, but is there an update on the speed camera on Old Bayside Road? Is that coming to fruition anytime soon? Do we know?
Sergeant Phelps, do you have any? I heard from Ronnie.
And it's in their hands, right? It's in their hands. Okay, right. And then just look forward to Saturday. I'd say but when we win, it'll be the first time that Chesapeake Beach has won 2 years in a row, back to back. It'll be the first time. So
Keep it going.
So yeah, that'd be nice. That'll be a fun day. Pray for good weather.
Very good. But is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Good meeting.
Rasmussen.
From Saturday.
What is it?
So it's his talk on